Hello, it's Neil Dugan here. We're in the middle of this series of videos which we're exploring all of the issues around the conversations with the microbes, the books that we're writing. And we're also looking at the intersection of all that information with the coherence work we're doing, and particularly with the development of the coherence device. So where we are at the moment is we're looking at the physical brains, and the physical brain that everybody's most aware of is the head brain. So we're going to talk a little bit about the head brain and why the approach that I'm taking here is a little bit contradictory to the normal Western sort of medical science approach, but I'll explain how that all works. And there is a marriage available once you actually can see through the conflicts. So the head brain literally is in the skull. For Western medical science, it would also include the spine, so the spinal column, all the way down to the coccyx. And there are researchers showing that the connections go right out into the nerve bundles, going out to the different parts of the body as well. However, what we are focusing on here literally is what's inside the cranium, and that's made up of a whole lot of what would be considered from an evolutionary science perspective. Evolutionary steps that are actually represented in the brain. And if we look at a dissection of everything from a human, going back through primates, going back through other mammals, going back into reptiles and so on and so forth, we see a progression of brain structure. So like there is a definite progression of brain structure that can be seen there. And by the time you get back to reptiles, where I just broke off that conversation, you're seeing a far simpler structure in the head brain compared within a human. One of the other confusing aspects, so this is one of the major confusing aspects, is that I talk about the spinal brain, for example, managing all of the issues to do with the musculoskeletal system, the transportation around the body of fluids, all kinds of things, anything to do with movement really. And this goes right down to control of things over cell boundaries, for example. So in other words, the migration of chemistries and other organisms and so on across cell boundaries is looked after by this moving centre, which is in the spine. Now, this doesn't make sense at all from a Western medical perspective, because the structures up here in the head brain, which clearly have a linkage to, for example, to the coordination of movement, the coordination of the senses, so how the eyes are working, how the ears are working, all that type of thing. The centres in this head brain which actually manage all of this kind of stuff, and yet here I am saying that the archetypal control of these things is actually from the minds associated with the spinal brain, and from the spinal brain indeed. So there's no conflict as far as I'm concerned, because what we see in effect is that whilst the spinal brain is the master controller of the sort of brain activity that we're looking at, it utilises structures from all over the body, including those structures sitting up inside the head. So one brain is able to actually utilise the structures situated within another brain without any question. And we see the same thing, we'll talk about it in a subsequent video, 2 videos on from here. We'll have a look at the instinctive brain, or the gut brain, and how it operates, and particularly when we're talking about immune system issues and all that type of thing. And the gut manages nearly all of that stuff, and there's really good examples of it. But there are structures within the head brain which are also absolutely involved. So like the actual structures of the brain around immunity, for example, are activated and operating. So the head brain is extremely diverse. It houses aspects of the other brains. That's my way of viewing it. And clearly it's supporting this sort of very high level thinking, which is the intellect, and the cortex, the outer part of the brain, of the head brain, is most commonly involved in that. That being said, things like movement and that sort of thing are controlled by aspects of the cortex as well. So that's really what I want to talk about, the head brain. We'll go on to the thoracic brain next, and look forward to seeing you. Thanks very much.